Okay, welcome. I am Ben Dowell, investment banking coach with Adventus. We're here with Rylan. And Rylan, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to University of Miami, Herbert? And what's your recruitment goal?
Absolutely. So my name is Rylan Chandler. I'm a sophomore at Miami right now, from the Boston area, just north of Boston. Miami was honestly not on my radar very much, but I applied because of the legal studies program within the business school. Got in on the pre-law track and kind of switched gears this semester, and looking to recruit for investment banking in the healthcare sector, hopefully in bulge bracket or elite boutique banks in New York.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Um, so our, you know, I'm checking out some of your questions here. Great to hear you're moving towards elite boutiques, and I've got your class of 2027 here. So you got interviews coming up in a few months, right?
Yep.
Um, what are you thinking about with respect to interviews? Where do you think your biggest weakness is right now?
I think at the moment I would say it's in technicals just because I haven't had, again, I came from a pre-law background, so it's not something, that I've had long experience with. And then I am working on two recruiting, on a couple modeling courses. So, hopefully that is touched up by the time the interviews come around. But if I were to step into the interview today, that would certainly be where I lack.
Okay, fair enough. I'm sure you've heard this, but the most important thing to know about technicals is that it's not the second floor of the house, it's the foundation of the house, right? You're not going to have a house without it. So it's what we call price of admission, meaning that if you don't have those, you're not getting in the door.
Hmm.
You're not even going to get the interview, right? You're not going to get that opportunity to even try to set yourself apart. All the other stuff, the behavioral stuff, the soft skills, using the language of the bankers and so forth, that all assumes that you've got a really strong foundation of technicals. Now, the good news is that the modeling programs will help, for sure. Um, Also, obviously, your classic, your IB 400 questions document that
Yep.
as good as it is to it's as valuable today as it was 10 years ago, because believe it or not, gap accounting has not changed a whole lot
Yep.
in that time, and nor has the capital asset pricing model hasn't changed in that time. So really great resource to focus on. I guess tell me more. Like, what's your plan? What are you working on? You mentioned the modeling programs, but what else are you working on right now? And what's your game plan to really to step up your focus there in the next 30 days?
Yeah, so I've been networking my ass off essentially. I'm coming from a non-target school, and so it's kind of starting, below the belt there and trying to move up. And so it's every weekend I'm maxing out my schedule send and sending about, 100 emails a week and just trying to meet as many people at banks that I'm specifically targeting and then hopefully in sectors that I'm targeting in the office that I'm targeting that I can. And so it's a lot of, where can I draw on a relationship there? Is it someone that's came from UM? Is it someone in a chapter of my fraternity in a different school? Is it someone that I can connect to on a healthcare standpoint,
Hmm.
based on my previous experiences and making those connections there to hopefully, in a couple months leverage into interviews and recommendations.
Yeah, sounds like a great networking plan. Definitely keep driving, and great to see you got the volume of that number of emails. That's great. Talk to me about your cold reach out email. How is it structured? What do you usually include in it?
I start out with, introduction, Miami Herbert Business School, majoring in finance, legal studies, and econ, and then move in, and then that I'm interested in investment banking, and if it's someone in the healthcare sector, I, especially specify to their sector, and then I go into, I had an internship, last summer at Cencora, which is a Fortune 10 pharmaceutical wholesaler. It was in their legal department, but I was able to transition that role now this semester into work with their M&A team, and so I reference that as kind of a little bit of background on me. And especially, again, if they're in the healthcare sector, I'm able to play that up. And for some banks, like Syncora just closed a deal with advised by Lazard. So when I reach out to someone from Lazard, I say, oh, very interested in this deal. I would love to hear your, experience on it. And then I ask, what it is that I'm actually looking for. I'm looking for a time to connect, hear your advice, hear about your process, what drew you to X bank and X sector, and then ask for tell them I appreciate their time and would love to set up a call.
And what are your response rates?
I'm at about 12% right now, which I'm pretty happy with. The I've been kind of told 10% is the standard benchmark, and so I'm happy with 12. The email seems to be working, so
So, given that you're targeting a lot of alums and fraternity folks and so forth, that's where your 12% is coming from, right? It's really
yeah.
just because you're of the people you selected. But I guess let me give you some advice. I think you should totally change your email. And I think you're going to double or triple your response rates. The response rates, I'll give you an example. So I developed an email. This was as president of a small business reaching out to directors and managing directors at banks. So
Hmm.
I should have like a 0.5% response rate. I was getting
Yeah.
40% response rate. So here's
Wow.
what you got to do. First off, your email's way too long. It's way
Okay.
too long. What do you got? That's like 3, 5, 6 paragraphs.
Yeah.
No one is going to read all the way to the bottom. They're just not. And if they do, I guess maybe that's 1% of them. Here's how you want to
Hmm.
structure it. The other problem with your email is too long, but also it's only about you. It's
Okay.
about, you probably say I a whole bunch of times, I, me, and this whole process isn't about you. It's about them.
Yep.
It's about them and how they have knowledge, they have experience, they have expertise, and that advice will be valuable for you, which will be rewarding for them to help somebody. So you see how we're
Hmm.
kind of, you need to say the same things, but just flip the angle and
Yep.
think more about your audience. So here's the specific format that I recommend. It's only 3 parts, just 3 parts. Number one is point of connection. You're already doing a great job of building a networking list with people that you have some type of point of connection with. That should be the first thing they read. It should be, hey, I'm Rylan. I'm a fellow alumni from U of M, class of blah, 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 right? Class of 27. Howard, that's the first thing they should see. I don't want them to read anything else. The first thing that they should see is how you two are connected, or if it's the fraternity and so forth. But mention that
Hmm.
up front. Number two is an ask. Your ask has got to be that second sentence. Don't put it at the bottom. Your ask up front. Your ask is, I would love to get 15 or 20 minutes to get your advice on how I can break into banking is one example. But you have to ask, you're asking them for time, you're asking them for advice. You're not asking for anything else.
Hmm.
The good news is people have lots of advice and they don't mind giving it away for free, right?
Yeah.
And they actually kind of enjoy giving it away because it puts them on a pedestal, right? Oh, you're the knowledgeable, wise person, and you're showering your wisdom on me, the lowly student that I'm trying to learn. That type of dynamic is something that's going to be appealing to the other person. Um, and then number three, availability. Put 3 dates with multiple times on each date, bullet pointed out. When are you available? Some people tell me, oh, Ben, that's too forward. I say, bullshit. It's not too forward. You are being respectful of that other person and their time. And now they get this email. It's direct, it's clear, it's punchy. They know who's emailing, because the first thing you get an email, what are you thinking? If you get any email, what's the first? It's like subconscious, but what happens is you're
Who are
thinking,
you and
who the
why
hell
are
are
you
you?
talking to me?
Who
Yep.
the hell is this? Exactly. Okay, this is okay. It's a fraternity brother. Okay. Well, why the hell are they contacting me? Oh, he wants 15 minutes to talk advice about banking. Now they're thinking, oh, now in their mind, they're like, okay, that makes sense. Sure. That's it. And then the next thing you want them to see is Tuesday, 4 p.m. And
Yep.
now all they have to do is hit reply, Tuesday, 4 p.m. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to write you a paragraph, doesn't have to write all salutations and all this stuff. I hope you're doing well, blah, blah, blah. No, reply Tuesday, 4 p.m. That's it. You get that Tuesday, 4 p.m. calendar invite, Teams meeting, Zoom meeting, whatever. Send it over and it's done. Just like that. They sent
Hmm.
all, right. So what you've done is you've lowered the barrier you've lowered the cost of what it takes on them to get the meeting scheduled.
Yeah.
Imagine the chaos that ensues if you don't do that. If you don't provide that availability. So many people don't do that. They think, "Oh, I don't want to be too forward." No, what are you doing? You're giving that person a homework assignment. You're telling them,
Yeah.
hey, could you just go through your schedule for the next month and just name every single time that you're currently available? Can you just go ahead and do that for me, please? Like you're not saying that, but you're implying that.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
how they're going to receive it. And they're going to be like, "Ugh, I'm happy to talk to you, dude, but really? Okay, fine. I guess I'll start to, and now 5 minutes later, they're hitting send instead of 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
So those are the three pieces. So I would delete. If you want to add background, hey, here's a little bit more about me. Put it all the way at the bottom below your signature block. Put a divider line and just say my background, and just put it all the way at the bottom. If they get that far, if then you've really got them hooked, and they'll read down. But you don't need that. They don't need that. All they know is, oh, fraternity brother, interested in banking, class of 27, done. They don't need to know more than that.
Hmm.
Right?
That makes
And
sense. That makes
I
a whole lot of
guarantee you,
sense.
5 years from now, when you're in that seat and someone's reaching out to you, this is what you're going to be thinking. You're like, I
Yeah.
don't care where you went. I don't care where you. Yeah, great. You worked at a sandwich shop when you were 17. It just doesn't matter. What are you talking about? Do you want to talk or not? Okay, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but
No,
uh,
no, that's super helpful. It makes a whole lot of sense.
cool. I haven't gone through the email format, so this was good. So that's the winning email format. So just to summarize again for everybody, it's number one, point of connection. How are you connected to this person? Number two, what's your ask? Right, you're asking for advice on something. Asking for time, asking for advice. That's what you're asking for. No, and number three, logistics. Close the deal, put out availability, and even if they're not available during those times because you did it first, they're going to want to reciprocate
Right.
and do it because you already put out dates and now it's their turn, right? And so there's
Would
another sub.
you
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you strong on the 3 dates, or I tend to do that on the follow up. So what in the kind of success that I've had has been they respond with like love to get to know you, and then I send my times where I tend to go with 5 and build out a whole
Five
week.
is
Is
good.
that
Three is a
okay?
minimum. I would say 3 to 5.
Yep.
3 to 5. Probably more than that just gets a little onerous.
Yeah.
Three works. So,
Hmm.
but the key is, 3 dates, but then probably 2 to 4 times
Right. No,
each of those
absolutely.
dates. Spread the dates out and try to mix the times up. Give them something in the morning. Give them something in the early evening, because you just don't know when their free time is going to be. Of course.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, yeah. So I guess what I'm really saying is you're going to cut 2 to 3 communication links out of this
Hmm.
process because you're moving the dates forward, and you're just going to skip 2 emails, and that's going to improve your response rates because you've lowered the cost to your customer of what it takes to engage with you.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So, and all right, and get back to me. Send me an email. Be like, hey, Ben, I implemented this new
100%.
process, sent out 100 more emails. I want to know what your response rate is. We'll do the statistical analysis.
Will do. Absolutely.
All right, awesome. What else? Is there anything, broadly that you're struggling with, or that you're frustrated with, or that you're concerned about?
I'm curious about, you have all these networking calls and you make, good connections where you can. With some people, I've had them offer to say, like, okay, I'm going to make you a recommendation. And that's pretty clear about kind of the tangible impact of that call. With the people that I just have a good connection with, we agree to stay connected through the process and reach out again in, a month or two to, um, to reconnect and talk again. How do you leverage that into getting a referral or getting a recommendation where it's actually helpful in the interview
Right,
process,
with the goal of getting another contact.
or to
Uh,
get I don't know how the process goes on the banking side, but to put my name in to
in the
recruiting into HR to get that first round
the
interview.
move forward in the process, yeah, because that's a good question. I mean, there is a hidden cut. A lot of people don't know this. They don't just look at applications. They look at the people who are who are engaging with the bankers. The bankers are tracking a lot of that, and they compile all this information. And if you've never reached out to them and you just apply, like, you're not going to move forward. You're not going to get the first
Yeah.
round. Um, so, like, how to do that? First, I want to I'll just give you an old adage from venture capital, which goes something like, it also works in sales too, but in venture capital, which means basically says if you ask for money, you'll get advice. But if you ask for advice, you'll get money. And so what I mean by that is, basically you're not ever going to ask, well, can you please put me forward in your interview process? Like you're not going to
Yeah.
do that. Why? Because that's implied. They know why you're reaching out. There's no one who's confused about that. And so the short answer is you don't really need to ask them that in terms of moving forward. The way to get at it would be more to ask, and again, ask advice. I'm going to keep using that word, ask advice. So if you want to know how to do something, ask them, what advice do you have for me when I'm trying to do this? So you could say something like, hey, well, look, my goal is to get a first round interview at JP Morgan Chicago. What advice do you have for me? What would you tell me? What advice do you have for me to help me where I might accomplish that goal? You'll say it more eloquently than that, but that's the essence, right? Here's my goal. What advice do you have for me? I'd love to hear it. And then they're going to start talking. Start taking notes. They're going to give you all these gold nuggets from, talk to this person. They'll start throwing out names. They'll start telling you about the recruiting timeline. They'll start telling you about pitfalls they've seen other people fall. You just don't really know what the advice is going to be. And what happens when you do that, a subconscious thing happens, which is very powerful, is they will start to solve your problem for you. And they will offer, oh, okay, that's cool. But you know what? I'm going to forward your resume over to George in recruiting and make sure that he puts you on our invite list for our bowling event we're having 2 weeks from now, right? Bang! Now you're in the works, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
not because you asked them to invite you to the bowling event. It's that you asked for advice on how you can succeed in accomplishing your goal. So own that goal. Now, if you're talking to a Lazard banker in San Francisco, don't ask them how you can succeed in a Morgan Stanley application process in New York City,
Right.
right? Being a little facetious, that's pretty obvious, but make sure that goal, you want to tailor the goal so it's relevant to your audience, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, be straight up with people. There's nothing wrong with talking to a technology banker in San Francisco when your goal is to be a middle market in Chicago. You need to network with a lot of people. And so if that truly is your goal, and you're not interested in San Francisco, but you're talking to someone in San Francisco because they responded, right? They went to your school or their fraternity. They want to help you, and so I would say number one, be honest and genuine, straightforward with what your goal is. It doesn't have to align with that person, but if you are interested in San Francisco in this example, and it is a possibility, then tailor that goal to that person so you're getting the best advice possible. So that's number one, is tell them your goal, ask for advice. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is around referrals. There's a specific technique that I recommend, which is ask for a specific referral. Okay, so a lot of people wait to the end of the call and they're thinking, oh crap, I got to get a referral. Oh shoot, this is awkward. I don't know what to do. And they panic, and either they don't ask or they ask in this really awkward way at the end. And then the banker says, I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure one or both of those have happened to you multiple times.
Yeah.
They happen to everybody. Here's how to get around that. During the discussion, they're going to be talking about all kinds of things. You should be taking notes. They're going to say
Absolutely.
something that's interesting. Oh, I worked on this, whatever, this construction company deal that was $100 million deal in Pittsburgh. Is where the deal
Mm-hmm.
was. It was where the company was. And then, they're telling you about the deal, telling you all these things. And then you could say, you know what? At the end of that, I would really love to learn more about about deals in the construction space. Do you know anyone else who would be a great person to talk to about that?
Mm-hmm.
And you see how much more natural that
Yeah.
is? It feels good, and it's more respectable because you pulled on something they said, you listened, and then you asked a follow-up question about that. And more than that, you showed curiosity about the topic they were telling you about, and you want to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's the context now. And then subconsciously, the reason why that's powerful. So you showed that, which is good, which is you showing up well. You're going to show up more like a professional and not like a scared student. And then, but the other piece is more subconscious, which means that you have made their job easier to make a referral for you.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier for them to think of a name in a specific context than it is to think of a name in a generic context. Like if I asked, if I said, I don't know, like name, I don't know, if you could, especially with coming up with names, if you said, hey, I don't know, I'm not going to have a good example here, but basically like name one sports figure. You're like, what is
Yeah.
you're thinking of boxing or tennis or ping pong? Like what? Whereas if they
Yep.
name your favorite Chicago Cubs player.
You
Okay,
go right
Andre
to it.
Dawson. That's easy. Like
Yep.
bang, the name just pops into your head. So it's exactly the same concept. If you ask too generic of a question, it's actually you're thinking it's easier because it's more broad. They have more options. It's the opposite that's true. It's so broad that it's confusing and ambiguous. Specificity will win. So ask them for that construction person. They probably only know one construction person, which is perfect because now there's only one name they can think of, and that's the person. Oh, yeah, that's Randy. I'll introduce you to Randy. I'm going to hit forward on your resume right now. Boom. And it's done.
Yep.
That's how
The
you're
other
going to
thing
get the referral.
the other thing I tend to do there is I kind of I'll prepare for the networking call, and so I come in with like, oh, I'm fascinated by this recent deal that your bank closed on. Did you have the opportunity to work on it? One that's in their sector that they might have, and sometimes they do, and I can hear about it. But most of the time they don't because it's a large team and they just haven't happen to have that. So then I'll end it with, I still super interested in this, and this Exxon Mobil deal. Like, is there anyone on your team or that you work with that has had that? And then it's also because I worry about if it's something that they've worked on, and I'm just like I want to talk to more people about it. Kind of coming off across like talking to you about it wasn't enough.
Right.
Can I have
Good
someone else?
point. You
So
want to avoid that, right? If they tell you about the ExxonMobil deal and you ask, well, is there anyone else I could talk to you about the ExxonMobil deal? Because clearly you don't know what you're talking about, right? You want to avoid any whisper of that kind of vibe, which is why you want to dial it back a little bit in terms of zoom out. So that it's more like it's the other way around. So it's more like that ExxonMobil deal you told me about was really fascinating. I would love to learn more about transactions in the oil and gas
mm,
space. Do you know any other oil and gas bankers that would be good to talk to? And I would
mm-hmm,
ask, don't ask about, I don't know. It's not wrong to ask about someone else on the team, but I would just say let them offer it up.
mm-hmm,
Let them offer it up. You just don't know. You have no idea what the dynamics are on the ground. Maybe they had an argument with someone on their team yesterday and they just don't even want to deal with that person. There's just so many random things that you could never predict and you just don't need to worry about. That's why you asked another banker. Now they have it's specific enough because you gave them that oil and gas category, but it's flexible enough where they can introduce you to a fraternity buddy of theirs who works across the country, right? That would be fine. Um, they could also introduce you to the person sitting next to them. So you're giving them enough flexibility, but with enough specificity. And it is a balance between those two.
makes sense.
Um, Good stuff. I'm just looking at a couple of your questions here. Okay, how do you balance interview preparation and networking with academics and campus involvement? Man, that's a tough question. I think
Yeah.
you could probably be a better answer. You could probably give me a better answer. So I definitely did that at. So I recruited for banking when I was in my MBA program. It was a
Mm-hmm,
full time MBA, and I had a wife and three kids as well. So I was balancing family, home, academics, and I was the president of the class. Um, and recruiting for banking, doing the networking. So, I feel your pain on that. The direct answer is you got to prioritize recruiting. It's as simple as
mm-hmm,
that. No, don't forego your grades and don't forego studying. I'm not proposing that. But between academics, the things you got to do to get your grades, and the things you got to do to move forward on recruiting, those are the two things that are high priority. And there's probably going to be some campus stuff that takes a step back. There's probably going to be Some other things that take a step back. But the fact of the matter is that recruiting is a finite window.
Yeah,
And if you don't prioritize the recruiting in that finite window, the window will be gone and you will not have an internship. And so once you've made this commitment to recruit for investment banking, you've recruited to that time, you've committed to that timeline, and you have to deliver on it. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. You've got plenty of time in the spring. After the tough interviews are over, you have plenty of time junior year, senior year. After you've got a full time offer in hand to go deep into the campus involvement stuff. That's probably campus involvement is what's going to take the biggest backseat. Um, Definitely don't forget about your GPA. They probably won't ask you about your GPA, but your
first
undergraduate
thing on the resume. So
yeah, your undergraduate GPA, it's not going away. Like your high school GPA, no one cares. It doesn't matter. Once you get into college, your high school GPA goes out the window. It just doesn't matter. But your undergraduate GPA will stay with you for the rest of your life.
hmm
Anytime you apply for a graduate program, um, you know, your employer may ask about it in your first job, but any other type of academic endeavor that you pursue the whole rest of your life, it's going to be a major factor, and especially if you want to go to a top MBA program down the road. Um, that's the number one thing they look at is undergrad GPA. So
yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's what I would say on that one. It's just tough. You got to make sacrifices and know that when you commit to banking, you're committing to that timeline and you're going to sacrifice the things, several of the things that, you know, that don't, that
yeah,
aren't as intense. So that's the short answer. What do you
it
think
makes
about that?
sense.
But let me turn it around. How have you balanced things? You're in the middle of it right now.
Yeah, it's been a grind. That's that is what it is. I am pretty involved on campus. I'm also working a remote internship. President of
Nice.
a business fraternity in a social one as well. I'm in a consulting group. I'm in student government. A teaching assistant. So I'm
Wow.
all over campus. And so it's been an interesting balance. And what ends up happening is that my days are packed full. I can get 5, 6 calls in a day, but I am, on campus without more than a half hour break from 8 to 5. And so there was a conscious like scheduling of classes around like let's put them in the mornings because what I've tended to find is that people that I reach out to don't schedule calls in the mornings.
Yep.
And then at school, a lot of the people aren't awake. And so if I can get those, obligations knocked out of the way in the morning, that's helpful. Apart from that, it is a lot of, using the downtime very focused, very, intentionally. And so if I'm going to have a weekend, if I have a Sunday with nothing going on, that Sunday needs to be, you know, a lot of hours of getting my work
Yeah.
done and getting ahead of everything so that I can free up time during the week to be able to, participate in this recruiting process. A lot of, writing my emails Sunday night to schedule them for Tuesday so I don't have to worry about doing them during the week. And then, writing my thank you emails at night so I can schedule for the next day. So again, don't have to do it, during that day. But so it's been prioritize recruiting without, hopefully sacrificing stuff on campus because I enjoy it. I think it builds out my resume nicely, but I actually enjoy the involvements. I mean, there's nothing I do that I don't actively want to be a part of. And so it is, it's a lot of, maximize the schedule where I can and
Yep.
prioritize the recruiting where I can. If there are classes which don't take attendance, I might be taking notes from someone else because there's a call during it. So
No, it makes sense. Look, man, that's impressive. And look, that's going to show through in your resume and in your accomplishments while you're in school. So, sounds like you got a good handle on it. I do agree with you, and that's what I did at Kellogg. Was I strongly preferred morning classes. We had the earliest slot. I think morning classes were 8:30,
mhm.
and I just scheduled a ton of classes at 8:30 just because it was easy. I got my day started early, got stuff getting knocked out early, and was done with
Yeah.
classes earlier. So you also asked if you could go back in recruiting. Got a new question. If you could go back in recruiting again, what would you do differently? And I thought about this one, and overall, look, my recruiting went well. I got multiple offers. I picked the one that I liked the best, and things worked out for me. But what I would say, one thing that I would do differently is I would have done. more research and investigation up front around the types of investment banks and talk to more people in bulge bracket, in the elite
Mm-hmm.
boutiques, the independent banks, small boutiques, and middle market. I would have just talked to more people and just better understood those different types. Because what I learned having been in banking, I got a little bit lucky because I picked Baird, and I'm really glad I picked middle market because for me that was the right fit because
Mm-hmm.
we had great deal flow. I was in a coverage group, but we also executed deals, and so I was getting the best of both worlds, getting the client facing aspects of coverage, pitching, client interface, working with CFOs and CEOs, but I got the execution experience of being on a real deal team and not just passing that off to a products group. And so
Mm-hmm.
I really, really valued that. So knowing that, I would have gone harder at the other Chicago middle market banks than I did. I kind
Yeah.
of took more of a free flow approach where it's like, I'm going to talk to all the banks. I'm going to see what bankers I like better, see what cultures I like better. But really, the major driver of my experience was the fact that I went to a middle market bank, and things worked out well. But a lot of people don't appreciate the middle markets versus the bulge brackets, and then they get into an industry coverage group, and they never actually they're barely on deals at all, and they're like, "What's
Mm-hmm.
going on here? I thought I was supposed to be an M&A." But but part of it was they didn't really realize what is pitching, what is client management, what are these idea books and research projects that the CFO is having you do, and how that differs from actually moving a deal from start to close and all the things that have to happen behind the scenes to do that. So, thinking about, because that's the number one decision you can make. A lot of times you can't choose what coverage group you're in, depending on the bank and how they
Mm-hmm.
assign that. You might not actually have say in that. You're not going to have a say who your boss is, what deal teams you're on. You're not going to have a say in any of that. But the biggest thing you have a say on is what firm that you say that you target, and then of course what industry subgroup are they in, right? Bulge bracket versus middle market versus independent banks and so forth. So that would be one thing that I would have done different.
What would you recommend there are kind of the benefits and drawbacks from different types of banks, like you say, bulge bracket, boutique, middle market? Because in school, at the very least, and even through this recruiting process, we maybe in the recruiting process get a taste of the culture of different banks, but we don't learn about
Yeah.
in a finance class like what is a bulge bracket look like from a deal flow standpoint versus middle market. So what would you say are the kind of benefits and drawbacks for each?
So no, it's a great question. I'll do so. I can answer more specifically for middle market, maybe a little more generally for bulge bracket. But again, I really encourage people to talk to the real bankers and ask them this question. But in general, look, it's all about how are you. Let's just zoom out for a second. It's all about how you measure that, and you need to measure it against your goal. So it depends on what your goal is, right? If your goal, is to be a CFO, or is your goal to be in middle market PE, or is your goal to be in venture capital, or is your goal, like, based on your goal, you're going to chart a little bit of a different course. And so what I would say is, like, if your goal is to be in middle market PE, because there's a lot of those shops out there, and they're great jobs, great places to work. Where do you think they recruit from?
Middle market banks.
Middle market banks, because they do middle market deals. And like, they'll doesn't mean they won't hire a bulge bracket banker. They do, of course they do. But they know that that person's going to have a pretty steep learning curve
Mm-hmm.
because they've never actually executed a middle market deal before, and that's all that the middle market PEs do. And you can kind of set yourself up for failure going. And I've seen a lot of people have a hard time transitioning. Be J.P. Morgan going to Baird. Again, Baird isn't really sure if they want the JP. I've known some folks who transitioned over. They had to work really hard, and if they do that, they tend to do really, really well. Because they're smart, they learn, they pick it up, they figure it out. But it is not a one-to-one translation. So, but I say all that to say it's about your goal. But that said, look, the benefits of bulge bracket, tons of benefits, right? You're getting a great brand name on the resume. You're going to get great training. You're going to meet a ton of great people in a great business. If you're on the coverage group, you're going to interface with some very senior folks in multi-billion-dollar companies, right? What a great way to build your network. You're going to get access to different PE opportunities at the big PE funds, the KKRs and the BlackRocks and the Blackstones and things. And so those are the advantages, and that's why people get drawn to them. Also, you might work on some blockbuster deal that gets in the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Whoa, we're famous. Like things like that can happen when you're in a bulge bracket. If you're a middle market, a lot of that isn't going to happen. Um, there are places that I've never heard of Baird, believe it or not. Like Baird's probably a bad example because they have a pretty big brand, but they're not as big as Goldman Sachs. They don't have a brand like that. And so you're going to have a little bit less brand value on your resume. But for me, the value in middle market is deal flow. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna build real skills, and you're gonna be on several deals start to finish. Even if you just work for 2 years, 3 years, you're gonna be on 4 to 6 deals, start to finish, plus other projects. And that's not all you'll do. You'll have a lot of other projects, but it's about how many deals did you do start to finish, pitch to close. How many did you do pitch to close, the whole thing, end to end? That's what really counts. Um, and so that's what I would argue the value of the middle market is. Also, middle market. I mean, after that, culture is going to vary by company, by office, by deal team, by managing director. That's going to be really hard to control and predict.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, those are some of the trade-offs. What's kind of cool is that the independent banks, they can be a bit of a balance. You might get a little bit of a smaller firm feel like a middle market, but you get some of the brand value. You get a
Mm-hmm.
Moelis, or a Greenhill and things. These are really great banks. They got great brands in the marketplace. They work on really big deals. So that you get a little bit of the cachet of bulge bracket, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
not getting lost in a firm of 10,000 people or
Right.
100,000 people.
Yeah.
If you're in
Okay.
like a Bank of America or something.
Yep.
So yeah,
Makes sense. So kind of figure out what's the goal. What are you trying to get out of this? And then, if you're trying to go middle market PE, target middle market banks and figure out what works best to your end goal there.
exactly, exactly. Cool. Well, so we got a couple minutes left here. What else is on your mind? What else? What do you think?
I mean, I'm curious to know, like, if you have advice. We've talked a lot about the recruiting process to get into the interviews. What advice do you have kind of thereafter once you're in these interviews and okay, you've gotten the first round? How do you stand out? To a recruiter, to someone's talking to hundreds of candidates. How do you stand out among them?
How do you stand out to the recruiter, or how do you stand
Or
out to the
in
bankers
the
when you're when
interview,
you're when you're on the job?
in the interview process, when you're
Hmm.
in a first, second round and you're trying to make it to that super day and get that offer, how do you stand out in those?
Okay. So, well, I mean, there's definitely some fundamentals that you've heard before, and we talked about it a little bit. But number one is going to be technicals. You've got to be above, not just above average, right? You've got to be top 20%, top quartile when it comes to technicals. If you do that, that's going to lay a very strong foundation and is going to give you room to mess up some other stuff. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work the other way around. If they only ask you three technicals and you get one of them wrong, well, 66% is a D, right? So you're not moving
Yep.
forward. And so, whereas some of the softer stuff, if you were slightly less polished, you can make up for it with technicals, and it doesn't work the other way around. So, number one, how to do that? I mean, Adventus, great program. Where are you taking the program yet? Or
Yeah. So I've
I should
kind
have
of
asked that.
gotten it started with it, but very busy, and so I've kind of looking at this
You got a
week
lot.
of
You got a lot
Thanksgiving.
going on.
Yeah, I'm looking at this week of Thanksgiving. I'm going home. I've got obviously no classes, and I that is going
Yeah.
to be that's the grind for the week.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is Adventus is going to cover you on a multiple levels. It's going to cover you on multiple levels from a technical skill perspective. So that's number one. Okay, moving on. Number two is the networking piece. You have to talk to a lot of people at the bank. So that way, when you're in the interview and they ask you a question, you can actually refer back to other conversations you've had. Say, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
I talked to Sharon, I talked to Sam, I talked to George. Um, and they told me this, and that really felt good. It resonated with me because I like this, and that's connected to the bank.
Yeah.
That's going to help you with the why this bank question. You've got to have a really great answer to why this bank. Um,
Hmm.
they're going to ask you, hey, why do you want to work for Goldman Sachs? Why do you want to work for Baird? Why do you want to work for JP Morgan? And you can't say what everybody else says.
Yeah.
If you say what most people say, which is going to be some generic thing, um, you're going to be forgotten about and written off almost immediately. So you have to work hard to build your answer on that. You do that by learning more about the firm. And the best tactical advice I can give you on how to learn more about a firm is going to be yes, talk to bankers who work there. That's obvious. Talk to bankers who used to work there. That's a little bit better.
Hmm.
Um, because people who used to work there will be a lot more honest with you than people who do work there.
Yeah.
Um, but then the other part is ask them, how do you guys set yourself apart from your competition in the pitch process,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's a great question because they're going to start to talk about how this bank is differentiated. What do they do best? What do they do better than their competition? It's going to be nuanced. It's going to be insightful. It's not going to be obvious. Um, and then you can take their answer. If you ask that to two or three people, you'll have a good sense for what the answer is, and you'll build a sense for how does the bank view itself.
Hmm.
How do the insiders talk about the bank internally? Then you want to take that language that you pull some of those specific words, and now you say, I want to be a part of an organization that is good in that way because it connects to this thing in my life that I like.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Um, and it's kind of a generic example, but you understand what I'm saying.
No,
Like,
it makes sense. I had a call with
yeah,
a guy at BNP Paribas the other day who
okay,
addressed that and talked about their kind of cross border functionality, and I'm able to tie that into some of my previous work where I was working on a French actually acquisition and able to talk about, oh, I had a great time working with international folks and working on these deals in other markets, and BNP has
yes.
such great cross border functionality, and that's why I'm intrigued by it. So
And that's a
exact,
powerful answer. That's
yeah,
a powerful answer because you've tapped into what's unique about the firm as they define it, but then you connected that to something you've done in your life that's relevant and was exciting and motivating to you. And now it's unique to you. And you're going to be the only person who interviews with them that day that says you worked on a French deal, you know, and that's why you're passionate about working on cross-border transactions, which is why you're passionate about working for BNP Paribas. Bang, they're gonna be like, okay, good marks, moving along.
hmm,
So after you do that and you crush your technicals, you're moving forward. You're moving
yep.
forward.
All right. Well, those two things that it's only two things. They're big things, but they're certainly very doable. So it's helpful.
Right. Exactly. You know. Exactly. Cool. All right, Rylan. Well, appreciate your time. Thanks for everything. Great discussion. And this has been Ben Dowell for Adventus, and we'll see you next time.